Good morning. I'm coming to you this morning, less than a week after the horrible events of Boulder, Colorado. Less than 3 weeks after the horrible murders of two Israeli embassy staffers outside the Capitol Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. And less than 60 days after the governor's mansion of Governor Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania was attacked on Passover. These three events share one thing in common. They are anti-Semitic events targeted at Jews for no other reason other than they're Jewish. They also share at their core the basic essence of anti-Semitism, which is the dehumanization of Jews. Make no mistake about it, Jews are not the source of anti-Semitism. There is no act that any Jew takes that is the source of anti-Semitism. And Israel, as a state, is not the source of anti-Semitism nor responsible for anti-Semitism. There is no policy of the government of Israel that is responsible for anti-Semitism. The dehumanization takes place where when our enemies conflate anyone who has an attachment to the state of Israel, any Jewish person that has an attachment to the state of Israel, with essentially a terrorist. And that anybody who has any affection and love for the state of Israel is fair game for acts of violence. When you equate Zionists with Nazis, you not only have a fundamental misunderstanding of what it means to be a Zionist, you also have a fundamental misunderstanding that your words dehumanize Jews and therefore make Jews a target of violence. The phrases that we've heard bandied about since October 7th, such as globalize the Intifada and free Palestine, are uttered by people who lack any historical context for what those words mean. Free Palestine, for example, is not an expression of national aspirations for the Palestinians. It's an expression that Palestine should be free of all Jews. Globalize the Intifada is not a metaphor for supporting the rights of Palestinians to have their own state. It's an actual statement that the Intifada, which by definition is violent, is something that should be directed toward Jews. All of this is done in an effort to dehumanize Jews, and it makes the situation of Jews around the world precarious and dangerous. What can we do about it? The reality is that anti-Semitism has been around since Jews have been around, and it's not going to be a problem that we solve overnight. Or solve it all, to be frank. But what I've argued is that we Jews of the United States are entitled to the full protections of all governments that apply, whether they be local governments, state governments, or the federal government. I think that all of the governments I've just mentioned have an obligation to the Jewish community to now assist in an even greater way in protecting the Jewish community by increasing their security grants, both on the state and federal level. Jews need the assistance of the federal government and of the state government in order to do this. There is legislation pending that seeks to do this, both at the state level and the national level. And I hope you will join me when we join with our partners to make sure that levels of security funding for the Jewish community increase. Because really, when you think about it, the responsibility for protecting the Jewish community of the United States is not the Jewish communities. It should be the responsibility of the government of California, the government of all states, and the federal government as well. And this has nothing to do with a particular government that is or is not in power. We should also bear in mind, not notwithstanding what I've just said, that in the end, the only people who are going to protect Jews are Jews. And therefore, we need to coalesce around the idea that we deserve protection from all authorities having jurisdiction over us, and that we expect that the rest of the country, that the rest of the state of Colorado or the state of California will understand that it is their responsibility as much as the responsibility of any Jewish community to protect Jews, just as it's the responsibility of those states and the federal government to protect all groups from hate crimes and from expressions of prejudice and racism. I think it's fair and appropriate that we Jews demand the same. I'm going to speak in much more detail about this, and I hope you'll join me tonight at services at 6:15 in the Gore Sanctuary. But as a closing remark, I also want to mention that one of our treasured staff members, Yael Green, who's our education intern, she's a student at the Hebrew Union College here in Los Angeles, is from the Boulder Jewish community. And in fact, her father, our colleague, Rabbi Fred Green, is the rabbi of Congregation Har Hashem in Boulder. There's information in today's e-news about how you can help that community and how you can reach out. I hope you'll read that information, and I hope you'll send a donation. The congregation will send a donation as well. And I hope you'll send some expressions of support to the Boulder Jewish community that we have this unique connection to by virtue of one of our staff members. If you'd like to hear more, please come this evening at 6:15 in the Gore Sanctuary. I'm also going to allow a little bit of time for some Q&A, so there'll be some time to do that. And I'm looking forward to seeing you there. All of us are going to be present as a clergy team to support and to go forward and celebrate Shabbat as well we should. Shabbat Shalom.